Welcome to TradersArmy.com, defending your right to build wealth and preserve capital for generations to come.
It's Monday. Welcome, everybody, to the Monday morning edition of the Daily Market Commentary. I'm your host, Chuck Fulkerson. Hope everybody had an absolutely amazing weekend as we are kicking off December in style. You might even want to start off with, you better not pout, you better not cry, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. Big rally. Santa Claus rally, I think, has finally decided to show up. But it's really, after last week, been a pretty nice upward move. So those of you new, do me a favor, click the subscribe button down below so that you get the updates as they become available. But let's go ahead and dive right in. So the S&P, we are up 50 points this morning. Now, we did a live trading room last night, and I actually didn't want to throw out too many trade ideas during this live trading room last night because I wanted to see where are we at the 2 a.m. mark. I wasn't willing to just jump in blindly on a gap and go in a Globex style of session. Okay, I felt like that would be a little bit hasty, but now as I look at it on a 15-minute chart, we're up 25 points from our initial move. Well, most of those 25 points happened in the first 15 minutes. We gapped up and immediately ran higher. Sold off a little bit of that, came back up to it again. And so now what I see is that we are setting ourselves up for another thrust higher from our current price. So what I would take a look at this point, none of these are really great reversal areas off of this 15-minute chart. Now, our momentum is getting a little bit weaker on the 15-minute time period, and so with slightly weaker momentum, by the way, there's no way I'm shorting against this thing. However, with slightly weaker momentum, I've got to have a reason to get long. And at this point right now, just based off of this little 15-minute time period, I'd be okay just getting long above this 28.10. Now, remember that this is on a 15-minute chart, right? So if I get this thing out in the next couple of minutes, this is what this is the area that we'd be looking at as a long above here. On a pullback style trade, none of these areas I'm super fond of. This was formed about 8:30, so it's a little bit not as great. Our momentum to the upside is waning just a little bit, and our 2 a.m. move was actually a little bit to the downside, right? So our London open move has been down. So I'd need to see a little bit of momentum built back to the upside, and that would be something with a breakout above 28.10. Right now would be the number that I would need to see. And frankly, I'd be even okay if you were way more conservative and went with a breakout above 28.14. I mean, we're already up 47 points. How high can we go? Well, we could add another 40 to that. We could also retrace 15 of it. So just make sure that you are on the right side of it and that you're being cautious with any trades that happen. In the NASDAQ, we're up a bit higher. So 2.4% we're up in the NASDAQ, where we're up 1.7 in the S&P. So up 2.5% in the NASDAQ markets. This one has a better pullback scenario. So in the NASDAQ, if I go to the 15-minute chart, you do have a slightly better pullback scenario right in here, right? So what we're looking at in the NQ would be a pullback area right in here. So we put that as purple. Okay, so and that's whole round number support as well in the NQ. Looking at the Russell, because I don't normally look at the RUT in the daily market commentary, but the fact that last night we looked at this and said that we would today. The RUT, I don't really have as much that I want to add. Now the RUT's up 1.4, so it's up as well. And looking at it on the 15-minute time period, the RUT actually is, if we get below here, has clean air to fall. So the RUT has clean air to fall if it breaks below here. I'm not saying that it will, and I'm not willing to short it, but the RUT is showing a little bit of weakness, which tells me that there may not be as much follow through on the speculative plays on here, even though they could come to fruition. And then the rut is a bit weaker than the other markets, and the Dow also is up, but it's up I guess almost 2%, so it's up a fair amount as well. It's actually up more than the S&P this morning. So looking at this, I wouldn't short any of them, but I do wonder, if I'm going to go long, it would be on a breakout of the Dow above here. So we just have to get above this area there. And on the Nasdaq, we've got a reversal level off that 15-minute chart. That 15-minute chart could also play in right here. Once again, 8:15. Is that really a time of day that we want to see a reversal? Not necessarily, but it could come into play. And then keep in mind that gaps are typically natural magnets for price. So just because we've taken this huge gap up today doesn't mean that gap's not going to get filled or at least have some sort of a pullback. Now, looking at crude oil. So in crude oil, we had talked about, those of you that were on the live trading room last night or you've watched the recording, this little tiny 15-minute area. We're coming close to it, but look at it. It's a dashed line, which means it's a confirmation style entry. Old area of resistance could potentially act as a new area of support right around here at this 5250 whole round number level. Very tight little level that is still in play as price is coming down into that region. Could give us a chance for a decent reversal. And gold, unfortunately, we had set up a trade for a reversal in gold. We just didn't get filled on it. It did not come down low enough to get us in on this thing. And last night we were looking at another iron condor in gold. Well, that iron condor, we did not have enough credit to really get into. So now, in gold on this 4 hour, we're kind of coming to that area of resistance. Let's see if we pull back a little bit to get us a chance to get long. We do have higher swing lows and higher swing highs here in gold. And so if we get a pullback to an area here in order to get long, I might come to this area right here now. And mind you, there's nothing yet for a strong breakout candidate. I'd like to see us fall back into this region in here. We do have this little area there to pay attention to, although I don't I don't like the time of day that was formed. But it is something for me to kind of look at and keep my eye on. And remember, anything that's formed around when it's gold, you can also look at the Australian market open as a key time of day. All right, in our bonds and currency markets. So in the bond area, last night I had talked about that the only play would be, if it did kind of a little bit of a breakdown out of here. But it was still taking a ton more risk, and that's anytime you're in the Globex session, that's what you're doing. Would be that would be a confirmation of that move down. Interestingly enough, is that the bonds are really gaining some steam here since the European market opened. So what does that tell us? Well, that tells us that the European markets are taking this as a sale on bonds, and they were buying lower on the pullback as price kind of came down, right? Because the European market opens are in their full thrux right now, and they've been buying since the European market opened. Hence the little sell-off in the S&P markets here in the last couple of minutes. The Aussie we gapped up, we sold off for just a little bit. My thought was that I didn't think that this sell-off would continue to move down, and then we almost immediately reversed and kind of headed back up. So now this one does give me a bite at the apple. Now here's what I would say if you're looking at this. What I wouldn't do is try to trade against this big trend, but I also wouldn't force it. And what I mean by that is here's a little area that you might consider a level. Well, that's kind of a retest of this area over here to the left. And how do I see that? Well, I see it on the 15-minute chart. And what I see on the 15-minute is that this little area here move higher, This acted as the retest of this level, and we, boom, popped up way higher than that. So now as we come down, I think there's room for price to fall a little bit because this has already been tested a couple of times. That being said, I'm not willing to short against something that's thrusted up this high. So I'm going to wait just a little bit and wait and see if we get a decent little reversal opportunity and set up for a breakout back to the upside. In the euro, last night I had talked about this little level for a potential reversal, and it did hit our this one hit our potential reversal on the hourly chart, and now has come down and hit what our target would be in the euro trade. So the euro trade, don't know if anybody set that one up last night. Once again, in a Globex, when you've got these kind of movements, I certainly wouldn't expect you to set things up that are outside of the norm, but this one actually did wind up hitting and running down nicely. So we'll remove those lines from the chart in just a little bit, as that one did meet entry. I'll put a little arrow here so that we know that that one's met entry. And then in the Canadian dollar, so the Canadian dollar also gapped straight up and has been a gap and go since it opened up. And as I look at this on the 4-hour time period, my next level of potential reversal was way up here. I didn't have any of these as areas that I thought reversal would happen, because to me, this is just a bunch of noise, right? I need those areas of reversal don't come into play for me in this one until way up here, which gives you room to run if we get a decent enough pullback to allow me to get in. And for that one, I would look right about here. So for that, we would look right here on the Canadian dollar, right, which is an old resistance area. As we broke out above that, this would be our potential reversal area in the Canadian dollar. Once again, we're still inside of the Globex session, so just be aware of the risks that we take in there, right? Now, the British pound, I talked about it last night a little bit, that we are still, short below this area, this 7703 for a breakout, 2703. But up here at this 2735, it was giving us an interesting signal. However, going straight down into it, this is not a breakout, right? We want to see basing above the level before we would take a breakdown onto that. Japanese yen, our supply level is still up above us in this region here. Copper has done the gap down, has gapped up, and we're starting to kind of fill that gap a little bit in copper. I talked about a potential little area here on the 15-minute of, where were we doing it? This area right here, acting as kind of, hey, if we break down below here, we could fall. And we've kind of come down from that area without coming back up over the pivot. And so I think this one actually, of all the stuff that has the opportunity to fade the gap, I think copper looks to be the weakest with the best opportunity to fade the gap. Interestingly enough, what are considered oftentimes leaders, right, market leaders, copper and Russell, are not as into this rally as everything else. So just keep that in mind. Now, I'm not saying, by the way, that it's going to fade, and I'm certainly not trying to trade against it, but there are certainly cases of things to look out for. So keep an eye on those of you that are subscribers, full subscribers to tradersarmy.com. Keep an eye on the trade feed today, as we will be definitely adding some trades to the trade feed today. If you've got any questions, please send us email, support@tradersarmy.com, and I will